All right, welcome to the SnydeReport podcast. I am your host, Gary Snyder. I will get to my guests in a minute, but if you're watching, it's no big surprise right now because both their smiling faces are right there. We need to thank our sponsors before we get started here. First of all, Robin Winston. Robin was with us when we launched that first email newsletter to 147 subscribers. We are now over 100,000. So thank you, Robin. Also helped us kickstart this podcast. Next up, we need to thank our longtime sponsor also, former Congresswoman Jill Long Thompson. Her book, Across the Aisle, Why Bipartisanship Works for America, is out. You can get that anywhere books are sold. And our newest sponsor, he's been a longtime sponsor of the newsletter, now here on the podcast, and that is Congressman Andre Carson. So thank you, Congressman Carson. My guests today are Representative Carey Hamilton and there's a lot of formers here, Paul, Mayor of Fort Wayne, Brady Center, now professor at IU, Paul Helmke.
Right. Great to see you, Gary.
It's been a while.
Carey. Yeah, it's been a while.
For those of you who are just joining into the video portion of this, we used to have Paul on almost on a weekly basis and let him and the late Congressman Mark Souder go at it on different issues. And that was sometimes quite fun to do.
Always enjoyed that.
Well, the reason we have you both on today is because of this, I don't know what we want to call it, the IU Board of Trustee debacle, I guess. But both of you, obviously, Paul, you're teaching. Carey, you're an alumni. I am not. I went to Ball State. My kids went to Purdue. So I'm kind of an outsider on this.
Here I am also a parent of two current IU students.
Okay. I do have a niece, and my late brother went there. So
one of Carey's children has been in my Civic Leaders Center program. So
yes. Yes, and it's an incredible program. Thank you, Paul, for that.
Very proud of it. He was recognized as one of the outstanding seniors at IU just a month or so ago. So
now I want to start with Carey because you are in the General Assembly. You put out a press release, and we'll get to that in a minute. But just talk to me for a minute how something like this can get into a bill at the last moment, and just kind of describe what this bill does.
Yeah, so this IU language was put into the state budget 24 hours before the final vote on the budget. So the budget, different iterations of the budget have been debated for months. And now this language that had never been considered by the House or the Senate is slipped in to the budget. And it's not about the budget, this IU language. Well, there's other language about IU in the budget that we've known about, and that's cuts to IU's budget. But that's not what we're talking about today, although they compound each other. You know, Gary, it's shameful that any new language would pop up in a budget, let alone language that is this controversial, that has never been publicly discussed and had no sunshine, no public debate, no legislative debate, no transparency. Barely media coverage. I mean, I think late Thursday or Wednesday night, it's all a blur to me now. Late Wednesday night after the budget dropped online, a reporter noticed it. I started to get emails pretty quickly from alum and professors from my district and elsewhere. It's shameful. And you asked, I guess, the second part of your question. I'll hit at a very high level, but Paul's going to really understand the impacts in Bloomington, and I look forward to hearing his insight too. But at a high level, kind of two key things. One, impacting tenure and academic freedom for professors. There's a ton of Indiana University governance language in this bill. Again, all new language and really harming tenure and academic freedom, which go hand in hand, is a whole conversation that worries me from many perspectives. But one is that we will lose talent. I've heard already from professors who will be shopping elsewhere because of a crackdown on academic freedom. Why would they stay in Indiana if they can go to other universities and truly have academic freedom and take that academic inquisitive thought and the work that they do in the directions they need to go to advance all the great work that happens at Indiana University. And I want to tie that to our economy. Indiana University has well over a $10 billion impact in Indiana, positive impact in Indiana every year in the form of the research and innovation that comes out of the university, the talent from our students working for Hoosier employers, the direct economic impact in Bloomington and all the other campuses across the state. It's massive. We're a research leader globally. We have world-class schools, from the School of Public and Environmental Affairs, the O'Neill School, to Kelly, to the Hamilton Luger, music, on, right? World-class programs that are now all under threat. And then to pile insult on to injury, the taking away of the alumni elected positions on the board of trustees is shameful. There are 3 positions that IU alumni, like myself, and thousands across the alumni network, and we have one of the largest alumni networks on the planet. 3 of the trustee positions are elected by alumni, and that is now erased. And in fact, the current alumni appointees could be, as soon as the governor signs the budget, be canned by the governor. He could fire them. And so I've actually called on him to not fire those elected trustees until we can have a public debate on this language, and maybe come back next year and rethink all of this really damaging new language in Indiana State Code.
Now, Paul, a tweet that you put out caught my eye. Why don't our legislators want input from alumni who serve on the Indiana University Board of Trustees? Why no debate on this proposal? What are your thoughts when you put that out and now that the legislation has passed?
Yeah, I'm an alum of IU, and my family's had a lot of alums. My grandfather graduated from IU's law school in undergrad 100 years ago this month. Or 100 years ago this spring. My father graduated from IU 75 years ago. I graduated from IU 55 years ago. Both of my daughters have IU degrees. So I feel very strongly about alumni connections with IU. When I was an undergrad here, I was a student body president. This is in the late 60s, which was a very contentious time. So I dealt very closely with IU trustees during that period of time. My grandfather was a trustee in the 1950s. I've worked with trustees and known trustees most of my life. And there have been good trustees. There have been some not so good trustees. There have been good elected trustees and some, not so good elected trustees across the board. But giving the alums a role in the governance of the university, I think, is an important concept. It's one that has been in the governing documents, in the statutes, since the 1890s. Alums have been given a role. Indiana University is one of the jewels for the state, and the state should be proud of it. And clearly the state sets up the governance structure, but the alums are part of what makes IU great too. And the connection between the alums and the university, I think, is an important one. That's why the alums have always been given a role in selecting some of the trustees. And to take that away is something that I found outrageous, and to do it particularly with no debate. There was language like this, similar to this, I think a year ago, but it came out in February at an earlier time period. People noticed it. People got upset about it, and it got pulled pretty quickly. And that was another bill that started, I think it was Senate Bill 202, that started dealing with some things, dealing with university governance. But they got rid of the language changing the trustee selection. This year they snuck it in, as Carey, as Representative Hamilton said, snuck it in at the last minute. People basically had less than 24 hours to respond before the final thing was voted on. Why is it important for alums to have a say? First of all, it ties the alums more closely to the university. They're going to help support the university with their financial donations, sending their kids there, visiting there, if they feel that connection. That's an important part. But the most important part is, I think, having those alumni voices through their elected trustees gives a different view when the trustees meet. I've noticed over the years, over the last 60 years where I've been particularly involved, that the alumni elected trustees, because they are elected by the alums, not appointed by the governor, have been the ones that are more likely to show up on campus to talk to the students when there's student concerns, talk to the faculty when there's faculty concerns. And that's because that's who selected them. The alums, the people on the campus.
Mm-hmm.
the gubernatorial appointees, and some of them do this too, but they're more responsible to what the governor has to say or what the governor thinks about something. The alumni trustees know that they were selected by the people that are on the campus and that will be graduating soon and that have graduated recently. So that's who they're responsive to. And I've noticed over the last few years that the alumni selected trustees are the ones that are most likely to raise questions, not be a rubber stamp, help debate crucial issues at the trustees. The governors had 6 of the 9 appointees, for my lifetime, most of my lifetime. I think Governor Braun said that the reason he thought this was a good bill is because he was concerned about the track that the university was on and what they were doing. The governor's appointees, and again, he hasn't had any yet, but the governor's appointees have had 2/3 of the control of the board forever. And there hasn't been a Democratic appointee to the board in over 20 years. These are appointees that Mitch Daniels made and Mike Pence made and Eric Holcomb made that have been making these decisions. So if the governor's unhappy with them, it's not the alumni he should be upset with. It's the previous governors. And again, I don't think really that there is anything majorly wrong with the way the university's going, but it's that we need to give the governor more control. It makes no sense to me. It changes the way that the alumni are going to feel about the university. It changes some of the debates that we're going to see at the trustee level because they're selected differently. And I think it sends a bad message. I mean, in an era where democracy seems to be further and further under attack, we should be encouraging more representative selections to things, not less. In particular, here's a budget bill that cuts the amount of support that the state's giving to IU and at the same time is giving the state more control over IU. Makes no sense to me.
Can I build on that, Gary?
Can both of you hold through a quick break?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back.
It's rock and roll. It's racing. It's Miller Lite Carb Day. Co-headlined by the All-American Rejects and Bret Michaels. Friday, May 23rd at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Following the final Indy 500 practice and the Pit Stop Challenge. Concert, pit, and VIP tickets available now at ims.com.
All right, well, welcome back to the Snide Report. If you're just joining us, we are speaking with Representative Carey Hamilton and former mayor of Fort Wayne and professor at IU, Paul Helmke. Carey, just before the break, you said you wanted to add something there?
Yeah, well, I just want to, for your watchers and listeners who don't have a connection to IU, there are plenty of Hoosiers who, sorry for them, don't have a connection to IU. I think it's important that I want to highlight why every Hoosier should be concerned about this. So, with the new administration in Washington, we've already had significant cuts to research. That's having, and certainly will have, a bigger negative impact on our universities, including Indiana University. So Purdue and IU Bloomington and IU Indy are R1 universities, which is the highest designation of research universities. They get tens, I think maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in research dollars every year. And we lead on cancer research and bioscience, so many good, strong areas. And why that's important to all Hoosiers is because that research leads to innovation that creates startups and supports employers here in Indiana, employers across the state who employ tens of thousands of Hoosiers with that university research. So we had that concern already as we were dealing with this legislative session. And now the idea that we would say to IU Bloomington, we're going to make it harder for your professors to do what they do. And so clearly we are under threat of losing more talent that drives all that innovation and economic development for our state is concerning to all Hoosiers.
Let me ask you this. This did not happen to Purdue. It did not happen to Ball State. So it was very specifically targeted at IU. And from what I'm reading, this was initiated by the president of IU. And as Carey mentioned, the governor says he's in full support. So there seems to be at least some kind of communication maybe there that they knew this was coming. Someone requested it, someone put it in, someone's going to sign the bill. So why do you think, and we'll go to Paul first, why do you think IU was specifically targeted in this action? What do you think it has something to do with the protests last summer? Do you think it has something to do with the fallout from that? Why IU? Why right now?
I mean, and that's what's hard for me to tell because again, there was no debate, there was no discussion. I know the Representative Matt Pierce asked some questions before the vote. Why now? Where'd this come from? And basically, the people that he was asking dodged the answer. So it's not clear exactly who this came from. But IU is the largest higher education institution in the state. We're the most prominent. We've been around the longest, and I think there's a lot of people that think they know better how to do things. And want to step in. As for whether or not the president of IU is involved, I don't know. I mean, I've heard that rumor. I do know that when I was mayor of Fort Wayne, if I could have appointed the city council members instead of having them elected, it would have probably been a lot smoother for me. I mean, there is a reason that people in that position, prefer not to have somebody debating what you're proposing. But that's not democracy. That's not our type system. And let me just, this ties into Carey's point too. That connection, it's important to strengthen that connection of alums to IU. The current governor does not have a degree from IU. The last governor did not have a degree from IU. Mitch Daniels did not have a degree from IU. I mean, of our last four governors, Mike Pence is the only one who had a connection to IU, and that's through his law degree. And I think, that doesn't mean that they can't make good appointments. I'd like the alums to have some say in this process.
Carey?
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul said it very well. I don't have any more insight into why this popped up in the last couple of days, in the last 24 hours of the legislative session. I've heard some rumors. I have not talked to President Whitten. So again, no time to understand where this came from, why, to discuss it openly.
The other language, and Carey mentioned this, there is other language that does apply to all the universities in the state, as I understand it, and this deals with the tenure issue. And I'm not a tenured professor. I'm considered a professor of practice. I'm still practicing, I guess, what I'm doing. It's based on having done other things in my career. So there are parts that don't apply to me. But if you're a tenured professor, it now says that the trustees have to set up productivity standards that deals with how much time you spend with graduate students, but it doesn't talk about undergraduate students. It talks about time you spend on research or in the classroom, and it says that trustees are supposed to set these standards. And if somebody doesn't meet them, you can be placed on probation and terminated, even if you have tenure. So the concern I know from a lot of my friends who are tenured professors is that the trustees could arbitrarily set some hard to meet standard that really has no connection with what really is the productivity and use that as a way to get rid of a professor. I would hope the trustees wouldn't do that, but by taking away some of those protections, tenure is what gives the professor independence on their research, on their teaching, on challenging students. The other thing that does affect me, I now have to post my syllabus online for all the state to see. That's fine with me. I've got no problems. I'm just not sure if now people are going to use AI to do searches of all the syllabi, and I've got to be careful if I use words like race or gay or trans or whatever. And I cover those issues because I teach law and policy classes. But maybe I need to be concerned on scrubbing my syllabi of controversial language as far as the legislators are concerned.
Your syllabus is going to end up on Todd Rokita's Tell on the School website.
Well, he's welcome to take my class too.
So
he probably needs to.
Paul just talked about some of the details of the legislation, and think about that. Like the legislature, the 150 members of the Indiana legislature over the course of 24 hours have come up with this highly prescriptive Indiana University governance, detailed in the weeds, administrative governance procedure. It makes no sense. That is micromanaging at its very worst in our state budget. It's just nonsensical.
There's one other thing, and this one, it's not as clear to me. and of course, since it wasn't debated, I'm not sure it's clear to the legislature, but that if there's a faculty body that votes on things, and it makes it clear that faculty are advisory only. There used to be this idea that faculty actually had to approve sort of faculty promotion decisions, as well as the trustees, and faculty discipline decisions as well as others. Now they're saying any faculty body decision is advisory only, but they also say that any group, any faculty representative group has to be open to the public. I just spent 2 hours on Friday at an O'Neill faculty and staff meeting. And, you vote on some things like changing the number on a course and the requirement for this course, the other course. I guess, according to the legislature, those meetings now need to be open to the public. And so we might need to hold them in a different room. And if they're open meetings, we might have other open meeting requirements, such as posting the agenda ahead of time. So it's, I'm not sure what that's going to start doing for just how we would do things. And try to get things done. If it means less meetings for me, fine. But I think it's just going to mean longer meetings because we'll have the public there too.
Maybe I should propose some legislation next year that the legislature hires the coaches and the assistant coaches. And, why don't we micromanage some other important areas of Indiana University as well?
But before we let both of you go, anything else that you wanted to cover before we let you run? And we'll start with you, Carey.
No, I think you did a great job of hitting the lowlights of this really shameful behind closed doors bit of legislation stuffed into the state budget.
I always feel better when the legislature's out of session because they can't cause any more damage. But I felt that for a long time. But it's there've been other the Senate Bill 1 that deals with I'm looking forward to getting my property taxes reduced $300. I'm not looking forward to having the local Steuben County income tax go up over 1% because that'll cost me more. That means so.
I got my property tax bill yesterday, and my assessment went from 204 to 246 in the last year. So yeah.
Yeah, my property taxes went up 15%, even though my rate went down. But the way that the legislature, in my feeling, that, cutting the property taxes and then basically forcing local governments to do a 1% income tax raise, the legislators can pat themselves on the back. It's going to be the mayors, city council members, county commissioners that are the ones that are going to be forced to raise these income taxes. They really don't have much choice.
Before we let you run, I'm going to give you each 1 minute. We do this at my kitchen table. You can kind of see it in the background there. Why should this matter to families that are sitting around kitchen tables right now trying to figure out how they're going to replace their health care or pay for prescriptions or groceries with everything that's happening both nationally at the state level? Why should they care about this when they're worried about those issues? We'll start with Paul.
Yeah, great question. It gets into the role of the university. I mean, a university like Indiana University does research that helps every family in the state of Indiana. Indiana University teaches so many students from the state of Indiana. I have so many students that are first-generation students. We want to have a world-class university that does a good job in teaching our children and our grandchildren and our neighbors' children. And we want that university also to be doing the research and doing the policy research that is going to make our state stronger and better. Every day we are impacted by something that folks at Indiana University have helped discover, helped do, or talked about. And that's going to affect the quality of the food that you get at the table. It's going to affect the quality of the education that your children and grandchildren are getting. And steps that, in my mind, and weaken Indiana University by giving the alumni less of a role and making the faculty more subject, perhaps, to the whims of the governor and the legislature. Those are going to drive away the good teachers, the good professors, the good researchers, and that's what concerns me long range.
I guess we know why he was now mayor of Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Carey.
Yeah, so it was 3 or 4 days ago that we got a new fiscal forecast showing that Indiana is in trouble for the next couple of years. The economists that produced that forecast for the legislature cited tariffs as one of the key reasons why Indiana's economy is going to hurt over the next couple of years. So we had to slash some items in the budget. Some of the items we slashed included things that do help working families, like childcare and early learning. There's some healthcare cuts. It's going to be tough. These next couple of years are going to be tough. So, back to Paul's point, and what we've kind of talked about here, IU, it's a part of our economy, a critical part of our economy, what the university delivers across our state. And so we're taking hits left and right to our economy. And this is another big self-inflicted hit on Indiana's economy.
All right, before we let you go, we need to remind everyone of our sponsors. First of all, we have Robin Winston. He has been on board with the newsletter and helped kickstart this podcast. So thank you, Robin. Also, Jill Long Thompson, former Congresswoman across the aisle, Why Bipartisanship Works for America. And if I'm reading this correctly, I think one of our guests has an essay in that book. And then we also need to thank Congressman Andre Carson. He's been on the newsletters from the start and now part of the podcast. So thank you to all three of those. Hit the subscribe button below. That way you get notified every time we post a new podcast. Hit the like button, make a comment, helps all that algorithm stuff. I'm Gary Snyder. They are not. She is Representative Carey Hamilton. He is Paul Helmke. We are out.